On December 11th, 2042, today was exceptionally cold. As I walked to work, gazing at the grayish sky, a faint sense of unease crept into my heart. I checked the weather forecast on my phone. It showed that heavy snowfall would begin this afternoon and persist for days, with temperatures plummeting steadily, currently at 1 degree Celsius above zero. By afternoon it would drop below freezing. Over the next few snowy days, tomorrow, the day after, and beyond, temperatures were projected to dive as low as -45 degrees Celsius. Pulling my collar tighter, I quickened my pace toward work. My office building stood in the bustling downtown core, housing a trading company. Living nearby, just a 15-minute walk from home, offered little comfort against the biting cold. By afternoon, the chill intensified sharply, and snowflakes began drifting down. Seated at my desk, staring out at the falling flakes, an irrational dread nagged at me. Perhaps it was merely my old anxiety disorder flaring up again, a neurosis that once plagued me with constant worry. Though I rationalized it away as residual symptoms, after work ended, I ventured into the blizzard toward our neighborhood supermarket. My apartment, perched on the 18th floor of an aging complex in the city center, belonged to my parents. Retired and returned to our rural hometown, they left me alone in this 3-bedroom, 2-living-room space. Grocery bags bulging, I huffed and puffed my way home. Near the entrance, Granny Wang greeted me. "Xiaoya, why so much shopping? Household supplies ran out," I replied curtly, hastening into the elevator. Socializing never came easily. Despite years here, I remained an outsider, polite but distant. This isolation defined me everywhere. At work too, where solitude was my norm, noticed by few. Back home, I organized purchases beside existing stocks. Sacks of rice enough for months, flour bags, cooking oil drums, fridge crammed with produce and meat. Day 2 brought -30 degrees Celsius. Day 3 worsened to -35 degrees Celsius. On day 4, though the snow paused briefly at -38 degrees Celsius, another impulse struck. Detouring to the supermarket again, I bought only mineral water, 2 cases of 10 500 milliliters bottles each. With home water reserves secure, relief washed over me momentarily. Later, calling parents revealed their village endured even harsher conditions. -60 degrees Celsius outside, mitigated slightly by heated Kong beds. Their compound brimmed with harvest bounty, corn piles outdoors, root cellars bursting with winter vegetables, plus a wellspring nearby. My elder brother's family managed farmland there, explaining why parents chose retirement there to help raise grandchildren. By day 5, mercury sank further to -40 degrees Celsius. Fresh powder fell on day 6, -23 degrees Celsius, and thickened on day 7, -46 degrees Celsius. Public panic escalated. Supermarket aisles grew chaotic as citizens hoarded necessities. Unprecedented sub-zero extremes paralyzed this northern metropolis. Municipal crews struggled relentlessly with snow removal, while essential services soldiered on. Daily now, besides filling carts at grocers, I raided outdoor supply stores for survival gear: thermal suits, electric blankets, portable heaters, solar panels. Like industrious ants stockpiling provisions bit by bit, slowly accumulating reserves. Today marked a full week of non-stop snowfall, lighter yet endless, pushing thermometers past -50 degrees Celsius. Finally, authorities issued alerts. Schools closed. Non-essential workers ordered indoors. Rural areas echoed similar warnings. Thankfully, parents stayed safe huddled with siblings clan. My company announced remote work starting tomorrow, distributing emergency rations, a hefty pack per employee, 20 kilograms rice, 10 kilograms millet, 10 kilograms flour, 5L cooking oil. Priceless lifelines when stores became inaccessible, burdened by these supplies, unable to hail transport. Colleague Lu Yan offered a ride home, our paths coinciding. Around my age mid-20s, hired 2 years ago alongside me, his imposing frame spoke silence itself, both taciturn souls. We shared the lift in wordless solidarity. Upon reaching my building, he helped carry everything inside before departing without fanfare. At that very moment, the couple from the 16th floor walked into the elevator with their heads drooping in dejection. When they saw so many items piled up inside the elevator, their eyes immediately lit up. Aunt He, the wife, greeted me eagerly. "Xiaoyu, your luck is incredible. You managed to grab all these supplies. We went to the supermarket but couldn't even get inside. Came back empty-handed. My husband, Mr. Zhao, is totally henpecked." He quickly chimed in, Yes, I've never seen a supermarket so packed. Pity we have 3 kids at home. If we don't get food soon. Instantly, I realized what they meant. Before they could say more, I pulled the supplies closer to my side and said firmly, Mr. Zhao, Auntie, these were issued by my company. My family doesn't have much left either. We'll rely on this stash for days to come. The couple's faces fell instantly, and they fell silent. Just then Lu Yan spoke up. Xiaoyu, I'll try the supermarket again tonight. See if I can buy more. Our household should stockpile some essentials. I understood his intention perfectly. He was putting on a show for the neighbors, implying I wasn't alone, that I had a boyfriend who'd soon move in. Both of us shared a sharp sense of crisis management. After dropping me off, Lu Yan turned to leave when I stopped him. Stay a while, I urged. It'd look odd if you left right away. He'd actually considered it too, but hesitated to suggest it himself. After all, a man proposing such proximity might seem suspicious. Lu Yan settled on the living room sofa while I brewed him hot tea and turned on the TV. I busied myself organizing my belongings. Over half an hour later, returning to the living room, I noticed him glancing repeatedly at his watch. It was 7 p.m. now, pitch dark outside. He must be anxious to go home. Apologetically, I said, sorry to keep you, Lu Yan. You should head back. Thank you so much today. As he stood up to leave, he paused at the window, brow furrowed. Joining him, I gasped. Snowflakes were pouring down like goose feathers, blanketing everything in minutes. Neither of us had noticed how drastically the weather had worsened during those 30 minutes. Without delay, Lu Yan hurried off, fearing roads would become impassable under accumulating snow. Standing at the window, I peered toward the nearby supermarket entrance. Despite the blizzard, crowds surged, packed shoulder to shoulder. Checking my phone, I saw the outdoor temperature had plummeted to -52 degrees Celsius, while my indoor thermometer read just 5 degrees Celsius. Even wrapped in my down jacket since returning, the cold clung stubbornly. I shivered. Before this Arctic blast, our apartment had been cozy at 25 degrees Celsius. Now, with heating cranked full blast, it barely reached 5 degrees Celsius, proof of how brutal the freeze was. Suddenly, crash! A car accident erupted on the street below, followed by multiple collisions. Peering through binoculars, I recognized Lu Yan's vehicle among the wreckage. Dialing frantically, I reached him. He staggered out, teeth chattering violently, insisting he was unhurt. Stranded victims huddled near their damaged cars, waiting fruitlessly for traffic police. But with accidents everywhere, dispatchers admitted responders were overwhelmed. Hours passed with no help. Shivering uncontrollably, some abandoned hope and trudged toward the supermarket, nearly a kilometer away. Most gave up midway, turning back home lest they get trapped. News reports confirmed chaos. Supermarket shelves stripped bare, desperate shoppers stumbling home defeated. Those with minor damage begged neighbors for refuge. Rideshare apps crashed, public transport paralyzed except subways, which were gridlocked. Alone and frozen, Lu Yan began walking toward the supermarket when my call came. Come to my place. Stay till subways reopen. He hesitated briefly before accepting. When the doorbell rang, I opened it to find Lu Yan's face livid with cold. Handing him a hot water bottle, I rushed to the kitchen and returned with a steaming bowl of noodle soup. Warm up, I said softly. He thanked me repeatedly, slurping noodles slowly. Sitting across from him, anxiety knotted my stomach. This might be worse than we thought, I murmured. Lu Yan looked out the window at the heavy snowfall, his eyes filled with confusion, and hoped that the snow would stop soon. I called my parents to check on their safety, and they were also experiencing a severe snowstorm in their hometown. My parents had installed independent heating equipment in their 3-story house, and even though they preferred traditional heating methods like burning earthen beds, they understood the importance of modern heating systems. After hanging up the phone, I noticed Lu Yan still on the phone. He was pleading with his father to stay safe and warm while he searched for supplies. However, his father became furious and hung up the phone, accusing him of being selfish and abandoning them. Lu Yan hung up the phone, his face flushed with shame. We waited for over an hour, and it was now past 11 p.m. The snow showed no signs of stopping, and we feared that the first floor could be flooded. I checked the news and realized the situation was dire. Most people had either returned home or were trapped near supermarkets and subway stations. Due to the extremely low temperatures, several subway stations had experienced breakdowns, and the subway service was temporarily suspended. Those trapped in the subways and staff members had no choice but to continue seeking shelter there. This extreme cold weather wasn't just affecting our city. Almost all cities in the northern region were experiencing similar conditions. Southern cities fared slightly better, but temperatures had also dropped to record lows. It had been decades since such freezing temperatures had been recorded across the entire northern hemisphere. Online discussions about a potential doomsday scenario were growing increasingly intense. Although only the first day of the power outage, Panic had already set in. Suddenly, I remembered to check if the water supply had been affected. Given the freezing temperatures, there was a high risk of frozen pipes. Upon checking, I found that the water supply was intact. I quickly grabbed all the containers in the kitchen and filled them with water. Seeing my actions, Lu Yan also went to the bathrooms to collect as many containers as possible. We both knew that a water shortage was imminent. At present, my home had 4 19-liter barrels of water, 60 bottles of 500 milliliters mineral water, and 10 5-liter small barrels. The available water supply was still relatively sufficient. After filling all the containers, Lu Yan cleaned the bowls he had used earlier. It was nearly midnight when I arranged Lu Yan to sleep in the second bedroom and went to bed myself in the master bedroom. Lying in bed, I fell asleep quickly but was jolted awake by the increasing coldness. I tightly wrapped myself in my blanket and checked the temperature on my phone. It was a bone-chilling minus 55 degrees Celsius outside. I then checked the indoor temperature and found it had dropped to minus 8 degrees Celsius. Shivering uncontrollably, I got out of bed, took out the electric blanket from the closet, and placed it on the bed before covering it with another thick blanket. Thinking about Lu Yan next door, who must also be freezing, I hesitated whether to give him an electric blanket. Considering the difference between men and women, I worried about knocking on his door at such a late hour. However, fearing for his life, I decided to bring him an electric blanket anyway. Dressed in my warmest clothes, I knocked on Lu Yan's door for a long time without any response. My heart began to race with worry. Not wanting to take any chances, I turned the doorknob and entered cautiously. To me, saving a life was more important than any potential danger. Such harsh weather conditions could indeed freeze a person to death in their sleep. As I approached Lu Yan's bed, he was still motionless. I shook him gently, then more forcefully, but he remained unresponsive. Worried, I felt his forehead and found him burning up with fever. Given his confused state, I suspected he might have become delirious due to high fever. I continued calling out to him, and even pinched him hard on various parts of his body in an attempt to wake him up. Eventually, he started to come to slowly. I hurriedly gave him some medicine and tried to offer him some warm water, but the warm water bottle was empty. There was no other option, so he had to swallow the medicine with ice-cold water. This sudden change in temperature seemed to shock him back to reality, and he mumbled a thank you as he fell asleep again under the new covers. Feeling relieved yet exhausted, I checked the temperature again on my phone. The outdoor temperature had dropped further to minus 57 degrees Celsius, and the indoor temperature had also decreased significantly to around minus 8 degrees Celsius. This confirmed that the heating system had failed. It was around 4 a.m. when I opened WeChat and entered the building group chat. My eyes widened at the flood of messages, hundreds upon hundreds. Too many people had been jolted awake by the cold, furiously demanding answers from property management about why the heating had stopped. The property responded that due to extremely low temperatures, the heating system had suffered a severe malfunction and had to be temporarily suspended. Repairs were underway. Lying in my bed, clutching my quilt tightly, I stared at the screen, utterly sleepless. My phone buzzed relentlessly with new notifications. These groups used to be muted, but now I'd switched them back to normal mode to gauge everyone's reality. As I scrolled through the messages, the tone shifted from initial complaints to desperation. Someone pleaded for help. A family member had fallen ill from the cold, but ambulance services were unavailable. The snow outside was over a meter deep, stranding all vehicles. Others begged neighbors for thick blankets, heavy coats, or emergency medicine. I watched for over an hour, transfixed. Around 6 a.m., a knock came at my door. Shivering, I pulled on my pre-prepared insulated cold weather gear, far warmer than regular down jackets, though only 2 women's sizes existed. Lu Yan's towering frame wouldn't fit. Opening the door, I found him awake. "You're up?" I said. He nodded. We sat in the living room, silence heavy between us. Words crowded our minds about future plans, yet neither spoke first. Fear for the unknown future hung thick in the air, not just ours, but everyone's. Lu Yan still wore his arrival jacket, trembling violently. Realizing his frailty post-illness, I fetched my father's old thick clothes, layering him in cotton-padded jackets and pants. He pulled up the current temps, minus 58 degrees Celsius outside, minus 12 degrees Celsius indoors. "We can't stay like this," he stated flatly. Mutual understanding settled. Neither could leave. My limited resources included a small electric heater and 2 electric blankets, useless against plummeting temps. Food and water? Enough. For 2 months. But water had already stopped. Though normally wary, something about Lu Yan radiated trustworthiness, an instinctive certainty. Opening up fully, I laid bare my situation. His visible relief warmed us both despite the freezing room. We could build a makeshift stove, he suggested. Burn furniture. My surprise must have shown. Young people rarely knew such skills. He nodded gravely. I know the principles. Strip copper from AC units / fridges. Fashion chimney with foil tape. It'll heat and cook. Racing to the kitchen, I confirmed gas stoves were dead. Natural gas cutoff. Breakfast became biscuits and icy water. By daylight, we began constructing the stove. Despite weakness from recent illness, Lu tackled critical tasks, disassembling appliances, chopping wood with a cleaver, while I assisted. He insisted on leading despite exhaustion. After a grueling day, our crude cylinder stove stood, 80 centimeters tall, 50 centimeters diameter, welded from fridge/AC panels, vented through sealed window cracks into the smaller second bedroom. 2 beds, a 1.5m and a 1.2m foldaway, gave us separate spaces. A curtain divided privacy. Survival trumped propriety. Concerns about boundaries dissolved. Survival demanded solidarity. That evening, feeding scrap wood into the stove, warmth finally bloomed. At 9 p.m., thermometers read -60 degrees Celsius outside, -22 degrees Celsius inside, up 8 degrees from pre-ignition, -30 degrees Celsius. Snow fell heavier, temperatures diving further, but we clung to hope. We would endure. The communication is still uninterrupted at this time. Despite the constant ringing of my phone, I rarely pay attention to messages in the group. In fact, this is also a kind of evasion, not wanting to pry into others' sufferings, because during the brief glimpse of today's daytime, I saw several news of deaths. Although there is currently no power outage, the air conditioner has long lost its heating function. People who can't think of a way out have to endure it hard, and those who can't endure it will only freeze to death. This is only the second day of the disaster, and around us, we don't know how many people have frozen to death. What about the future? The affected area is too wide, and the government cannot achieve full rescue for everyone. The best solution at present is only to wait and try to persist. This is also what the official calls for. My parents are fine for now, they can still hold on. At this time, Lu Yan's phone rings again, and he hangs up directly. Every time his phone rings this day, he hangs up once. After each call is hung up, his mood will worsen by a little bit. In fact, early in the morning, he received a call, but what he heard was not concern, only scolding and accusation from the caller. The caller ID showed the name of a man surnamed Lu, which I guess is his father. This is their privacy, so I didn't ask anything about it. After a day of troubles, we are both tired. Before going to bed, Lu Yan placed the frozen pot on the stove to let the stove's temperature slowly melt the ice in it. To make the small room warmer, we also turned on the space heater while there was still power. I lay on the 1.5-meter long bed, separated by a curtain from Lu Yan's simple bed. Each of us had an electric blanket, lying on which we wouldn't worry about freezing to death. It's now 10:30 p.m., and the indoor temperature is -16 degrees Celsius while the outdoor temperature is -62 degrees Celsius. The second floor is half submerged by water. If the snow stops tonight, it will at least give people a moment of respite. Last night, I was frozen and couldn't sleep well, but lying down quickly made me fall asleep. Lu Yan lies in bed, keeping his eyes on his phone. His father finally stopped sending abusive messages and instead pleaded with him, hoping he could come back with warm supplies and food. Lu Yan typed back, "How am I supposed to go back? Will I freeze to death outside?" His father responded, "You bastard, at this time, you still only think of yourself. Even if you die, you should die on the way to deliver supplies." Lu Yan replied, "Do you mean that even if there's a slight chance I can bring supplies back, I should risk my life, even if dying is the result? This is what you owe me. I raised you, gave you the greatest kindness. It's a debt you can never repay. Even if you died for me, it would only be what you ought to do. Is that what you call raising me? Being driven by you and your new wife to sleep in the hallway? Or being your punching bag, beaten and scolded every single day? Fine, if that's your idea of parenting, then why don't you treat your other 2 children the same way? If you truly believe I owe you, then don't my younger siblings owe you just as much? You little beast, how dare you curse my children? You'll die a horrible death, struck by lightning." Lu Yan switched off his phone, sinking once more into painful turmoil. The fact that he hadn't gone back to that house the day before was a small mercy. At least, at this life and death moment, he didn't have to face the ugliness of family head-on. The next morning I woke from sleep, opened my mobile, and checked the temperature. 3 degrees Celsius inside, -55 degrees Celsius outside. I exhaled in relief. At least we weren't in sub-zero temperatures indoors. I was still wearing my thermal suit, but I no longer felt cold. Getting out of bed, I drew the curtain. The snow had stopped and the sun had finally come out. it. Every sign rekindled a spark of hope. I called my parents first to confirm they were safe, then opened the news. The official tally of deaths from the extreme cold, just over 30,000 nationwide. Beneath that figure were tens of thousands of furious comments. No one believed the number. Everyone knew someone who had frozen to death. How could the countrywide total be only a few thousand? People raged. Where were the rescuers? When would heat, water, electricity be restored? When would this hellish weather end? Reading those messages, I couldn't help frowning. Our district still had power, but judging by the rest of the country, an outage was only a matter of time. Just then Lu Yen stirred behind the dividing curtain. He pulled it aside. Sunlight flooded the small room. I smoothed my expression and smiled at him. Morning, Lu Yen. Whatever happens, we're still alive. Let's try to keep our spirits up. Bathed in that smile and the morning light, something inside him actually warmed. Overnight, the big pot on the stove had heated the water. Lu Yen fed the stove a few more sticks of wood. The flames leapt higher. I ladled some water into a smaller pot and dropped in 2 bricks of instant noodles. They bubbled, releasing an aroma that made my mouth water. After a day without hot food, this was a feast in the middle of an ice age. Lu Yen and I savored it, hearts quietly content. Our wood will last a little over a month, Lu Yen said, then paused. If the weather doesn't turn or help doesn't come, then we leave it to fate. I finished lightly. One more day is one more day. You're not afraid of dying? He asked, noticing my calm. We sat by the stove, stools pulled close. I squinted at the bright sunlight outside. Would being afraid help? If not, why live in anxiety? I turned to him. I remind myself of that every day. Lu Yen chuckled. Good strategy. Suddenly, bang, bang, bang. A heavy knock on the door froze us. Lu Yen motioned me to stay put, pulled on an extra padded coat, and stepped out of the tiny room. The moment he opened the inner door, a blade of cold sliced in. I shivered. He closed it behind him. My phone was linked to the outside camera. I opened the feed. 2 figures in thick layers, scarves, hats, masks. Impossible to tell who. Lu Yen called from inside. Who is it? The deeper male voice made the visitors flinch. They understood at once. The taller one spoke. Is Xiao Yu home? Our 3 kids are all sick. Do you have any medicine we could borrow? I recognized the couple from the 16th floor, those I'd met in the elevator 2 days earlier. We have none. Please go back, Lu Yen replied flatly. Please, we're begging you. The children are burning with fever. They can't hold on any longer. We have nowhere else to turn. The woman's voice cracked, half sobbing. At the start of the disaster, people hadn't yet lost all humanity. If they were here pleading, they must truly be desperate. After a moment's hesitation, and only after making sure we were safe, I decided to help. 3 children were involved. I took out some anti-inflammatories and fever reducers, went to the door, opened the small security hatch, and passed 2 boxes through. As they took the medicine, they glimpsed Lu Yen. Now they knew a man really was here, not just a bluff. Xiao Yu, thank you so much. Anything you need, just say, except food. We'll do our best, the woman said, gratitude thick in her words. Nothing for now, I answered and shut the hatch. I hurried back to the inner room. Even those few seconds outside left me half frozen. Lu Yen had said nothing the whole time. Lu Yen, do you disapprove? I asked, teeth chattering as I pressed close to the stove. He shook his head. Not at all. At the start of a disaster, looking too cold-hearted invites resentment. Later, when supplies run out, those people will remember who helped and who didn't. If you hadn't been here, I wouldn't have dared give anything. Now that they've seen me, they'll think twice before causing trouble. You did right. Help when you can, provided you're safe. Thank you. No need. Everything here is yours. You're free to use it. Besides, I'm living off your kindness. Lu Yen, we're symbiotic now. I'm clear about that. In this situation, I'm the one depending on you. At my blunt honesty, Lu Yen flushed and looked away. Thank you, I added, now embarrassed myself. No, I'm the reason you can't be with your family. He paused, startled he'd let that slip. Maybe we should change the subject. Sure. Lu Yen quickly opened his phone and turned to the news. Days slid by 10, maybe more. Outdoor temperature, minus 60 degrees Celsius. A cold that could turn a person into an ice statue in seconds. It had held steady for days, neither rising nor falling. If it dropped further, even our little stove would fail. A few days earlier the power had cut out, and with it the internet. No one dared step outside. Every household still alive became an island. The snow had stopped, but the killing cold remained. After the blackout, my solar panels kept phones and a small lamp charged, but there was no way to power the electric heater or blankets. Inside the little room we hovered around 0 degrees Celsius, survivable. The attached toilet sat at 10 degrees Celsius. Every visit was a race. No lingering over one's phone like before. With the water off, the toilet couldn't flush. I lined the bowl with a plastic bag. When it filled, I tied it shut and replaced it. The contents froze solid almost at once. No smell. Unable to go out or reach the world. I had nothing to do. I slept more and more, sometimes half the day away. I felt like an animal in hibernation. Lu Yan checks the safety every day, cooks meals, and cleans up like a housekeeper. After completing these tasks, he gets bored and starts reading books from his study, which has hundreds of various types of books. Before communication was cut off, I contacted my family and they hid in the basement, moved 2 earth beds there, and burned them all day long. My brother is very capable, using tools to connect the basement with the cellar, so food is no longer a concern. For water, boiling snow can be used as an alternative. As for fuel, pulling corn from the courtyard provides both food and fuel. Knowing that the situation at home is better than here, I feel relieved knowing that I told my parents I am safe with my boyfriend's protection. Before communication was cut off, Lu Yan's family kept contacting him, hoping he could deliver supplies. He was conflicted but ultimately didn't risk his life to do so. His family must have had ways to keep warm, because they could survive until communication was cut off. They likely couldn't sustain themselves much longer. On this day, Lu Yan and I sat around the stove drinking porridge. We still have plenty of rice to make it with this small stove. Lu Yan suddenly stood up, sensing something might be wrong. Stay put, I'll check. Lu Yan opened the door of our small house, and the door stopper at the entrance made a harsh sound. The intruders only unlocked the door, but were stopped by the door stopper. Lu Yan quickly closed the door tightly and held a cleaver, saying coldly, "Leave now." The intruders wouldn't be deterred and used axes and cleavers to smash the door loudly, demanding food and threatening to kill us. I watched through the crack in disbelief. There were several of them. Lu Yan was strong but couldn't handle them all alone. I picked up a knife and ran to his side, ready to fight despite my lack of combat skills. Soon enough, the anti-theft door, under their brutal attack, finally gave way. 5 or 6 people armed with weapons charged towards us. Lu Yan reacted quickly, cutting one person's arm with the cleaver, and then stabbing another in the heart with a hidden dagger. A tall man wielding a vegetable knife aimed for me, and even though Lu Yan was fast, he couldn't defend against all of them. I fended off blindly when suddenly someone from behind stabbed the attacker who was about to hit me. It turned out to be the couple from the 16th floor who had come to help. With Lu Yan's strength and their assistance, we subdued the remaining intruders. However, the husband of the couple was severely injured. Since medical supplies were scarce, they were barely holding on. The wife broke down crying when her husband died, pleading for us to take in her 3 children. She coughed blood heavily and refused medication, insisting we save it for the children. Her sons cried uncontrollably over their mother, while she reassured them they would be fine if they listened to me. Lu Yan went to pick up the 3 children from the 16th floor, while I found medicine for the woman. She eventually passed away, and we placed her next to her husband. Lu Yan and I cleaned up the bodies outside, and discovered they were all neighbors from our building. We moved them into their own apartment where we found a burning metal basin filled with charred remains, indicating they used it for warmth without a chimney, making the room about 20 degrees below zero. Their apartment had no food left, explaining why they tried to rob us. Lu Yan suggested using their furniture for fuel since we had plenty of it. We locked the fire escape door, preventing anyone else from coming up. When we got back, I went to check on my sister-in-law in the bed. Her breathing was faint. I hugged her 3 children tightly. Tears dripped off my chin non-stop. Lu Yan ladled out the millet gruel on the stove, giving each child a small bowl, and telling them to eat slowly. The kids had been starved and frozen for so long that, once they finally had something hot, they gulped it down without a second thought. The eldest was a girl, 9, the second a boy, 6, the youngest another boy, just 3. Clearly they'd been protected far better than their parents. Their condition was much better. My sister-in-law didn't make it through the night. Her breathing stopped. Lu Yan and I carried her into the apartment opposite and laid her beside her husband, covering them both with a sheet. We gathered the children and bowed our heads in silent farewell, our own tiny funeral. Late that night I couldn't sleep at all. The horror I'd seen had left me badly shaken. While we'd been busy I'd forced it down, but now lying still, fear and anguish crashed over me in waves. Sensing something was wrong, Lu Yan whispered through the curtain, "Xiaoyu, I need to talk. Could you come here?" The 3 children lay beside me. I slipped out of bed as carefully as I could, stepped past the curtain, and sat beside Lu Yan. He took my hand gently, "I'm here," he said. Tears spilled again. I wiped them frantically. "No, no, they'll freeze. Xiao Yu, will you let me tell you about my family?" His voice was softer than I had ever heard it. My hand rested in his. I didn't answer, only sat motionless. When I was 8, my mother died. Less than 4 months later, my father brought home the woman who'd been his mistress. She was cruel. The first thing she did was chase me out to sleep in the hallway. Then she dumped every chore on me, cooking, cleaning, while she beat me for the smallest mistake. I kept hoping my father would protect me, but he never did. He hit me right along with her. When the college entrance exam ended, I fled to a university in the city. For years we had no contact. Then 2 years after I'd started working and finally saved enough for a down payment on my own place, that family of 4 shamelessly showed up and refused to leave. The rest you know. Snow disaster. I can't go back, and the man keeps calling, demanding I bring them supplies. His words pulled me back from the edge. I stared at his face. "Lu Yan, you've suffered so much." "Yes. For years I lived in agony. So many nights I thought of ending it all. But I held on. Bit by bit I healed myself, looked for redemption. So Xiao Yu, nothing lasts forever." He laid his hand over his heart, utterly earnest. "We have an instinct to survive. As long as we choose to, we can endure." I couldn't hold back any longer. I leaned into his arms. If he could break the curse of an unloving father, why couldn't I conquer my own terror? Days passed. My mind slowly steadied. We 5 stayed on in the little room. At first the children were timid, but seeing we truly cared for them, they relaxed and grew lively. Originally Lu Yan and I had moved little and eaten sparingly. Now, with 3 extra mouths, if we stretched every grain, our stock would last another 6 weeks. Date: January 24th, 2043, 33 days after the catastrophe. We set a marker, around March 15th, when spring should arrive and life renew. Perhaps the weather would turn. Hope, once kindled, keeps people going. The children, weakened by hunger and cold, fell ill with fevers again and again. Luckily we still had medicine. With careful nursing they slowly improved. Outside, most people had already died. Some perished from cold-triggered illness without treatment. Others starved once food ran out. Relatively few froze outright. Another month slipped away. February 28th, 2043. In the little room the 5 of us sat around the stove while Lu Yan read aloud from a book, a picture of quiet peace. Tomorrow it would be March, yet the temperature had not risen. None of us knew whether spring would truly bring the gift of life. Half a month later, exactly on schedule, our food ran out, but the temperature had inched upward. Not much outside, yet the room was 3 degrees warmer. Through the window we could see car roofs emerging. The snow had thinned, not melted, but sublimated under the sun. Lu Yan said he still had food in his car, those company gifts he'd never taken inside. If he could fetch them, we could last a while longer. I refused outright, even though the temperature had risen. Who knew what waited beyond the door? I couldn't let him risk his life. If we had to die, we would die together. All these weeks of shared hardship had bound us like family. Lu Yan, stubborn for once, insisted on going. "Even the smallest chance of survival is worth it," he said. I couldn't stop him. As he reached the door I rushed forward, threw my arms around him, and kissed him through tears. "Promise me you'll come back." He wiped my tears gently. "Careful, they'll freeze. For you and the children, I'll do everything I can to return." Finally he left, wearing the enlarged thermal suit I had altered. His car sat on the road just outside the complex. Gate, only 300 meters away. That short distance was why he refused to give up. I stood at the window with binoculars, tracking every step. I saw him leave the stairwell, watched him sink knee-deep in snow. Luckily the drifts were hard-packed. Step by agonizing step he forced himself forward. At last he reached the car, raised the axe, and began hacking at the frozen door. How long it took I don't know. Finally the door gave. He hauled out the boxes of food, tied them together with rope, and began the slow drag back. What I didn't see was that beneath his thick layers he had broken into a sweat from sheer exhaustion. At last, he made it safely into the stairwell. The moment I lost sight of him, a shadow of dread crept over me. I threw on my thickest coat, grabbed 2 daggers, and raced down the stairs. On the 5th floor landing I found 3 figures locked in a struggle. One of them was Lu Yan. He was clearly spent, no match for the other 2. His axe had been knocked away. He was about to be stabbed. I sprinted forward and drove my dagger into one attacker's back, pulling Lu Yen clear. Regaining his senses, Lu Yen snatched up the fallen axe and swung at the second man, who was raising a kitchen knife at me. In that split second, Lu Yen was faster. The axe fell and the man collapsed dead. Lu Yen dropped to his knees exhausted. I hurried to support him, checking for wounds. Fortunately, his padded coat had taken most of the damage. Only minor injuries showed. After a brief rest, as soon as he could stand, we hauled the supplies upstairs together. Those provisions kept us alive for nearly another month. Then, at last, we heard it, the rotors of rescue helicopters. The sound was like a choir of angels, pulling us out of the abyss we'd clung to for so long. Lu Yen and I led the children to the roof, waving frantically. Gradually, more and more rooftops filled with survivors. We were all ferried to the underground survivor city, where we finally settled and began life anew. Within days, my parents and brother's family were rescued and brought down as well. When we met again, none of us could hold back the tears. Among the survivors of the underground city, there was no sign of Lu Yen's relatives. They hadn't made it. For those selfish kin, Lu Yen had long since found peace. The official announcement was stark. This catastrophe would last for years. Even in summer, surface temperatures would remain below 40 degrees Celsius. Our future would be underground. But for us, as long as we could stay with those we loved and live on an underground world was every bit a paradise.